The night began with rain, the kind that doesn't rush but lingers like it's waiting for something to happen. I remember standing by my window in my small Edinburgh flat, listening to it whisper against the glass, each drop sounding like a memory I hadn't asked to remember. And then the knock, soft, hesitant, almost shy. When I opened the door, there he was, Marcus Sullivan, my apprentice from the art restoration workshop. His jacket was damp, his sandy hair glistening with rain, and in his hand, that vintage portfolio I'd loaned him weeks ago. He smiled a little embarrassed. "I didn't mean to bother you this late, Dr. Hayes. I just didn't want to forget again." And in that moment I forgot how to breathe. Sometimes the rain brings more than thunder. Sometimes it brings the thing you've secretly been missing. I invited him in, told him to dry off before heading back out. He hesitated, then stepped inside, leaving a trail of raindrops on my wooden floor. The air changed. It wasn't just the storm. It was the sound of his voice filling my quiet space. A sound that suddenly felt like warmth. I handed him a towel, our fingers brushed, and for a heartbeat, it felt like the world was holding its breath. He laughed softly, murmuring, "Thank you." And that's when the lights flickered. Once, twice, and went out completely. Only the rain kept speaking. In the dark, the heart learns to see more than the eyes ever could. Before I begin, let me ask you, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know how far my story is going. I lit a candle, its flame trembling the way my hands did. The golden light painted him in a way the daylight never could. Softer, more defined, almost timeless. His shadow stretched across my living room wall like something trying to reach me. He bent to pick up a few sketches that had fallen from my desk, his voice low, saying, "You work too hard, Dr. Hayes." And when our hands met over the same drawing, something unspoken hummed between us. I pulled back, but not fast enough to hide what I felt. He looked at me, and in his eyes there was a question neither of us could answer aloud. That's the thing about boundaries. They don't break with noise. They fade with silence. The rain pressed harder against the window, steady, rhythmic, almost human. Every sound seemed amplified. His breath, the way he shifted in his seat, the thunder rolling like a heartbeat outside. We spoke in half sentences, soft laughter and pauses that said too much. He told me about his dreams, how he wanted to create, to restore beauty, to live in moments that didn't always follow the expected path. And as he spoke, I realized somewhere between mentor and apprentice, we'd become two lonely souls just trying to be understood. Sometimes connection doesn't knock twice. It just stands there waiting for you to open the door. The candle burned lower. The shadows grew bolder. He glanced at me. Not like an apprentice looking at a mentor, but like a man seeing something he shouldn't yet can't turn away from. And I didn't stop him. For a moment, I forgot who was supposed to be guiding because the lesson that night wasn't in any workshop manual. The rain slowed, the silence deepened, and by the time the lights came back on, nothing between us felt the same anymore. Quick question. Have you ever seen the woman you wanted? Give her attention to a guy who didn't even deserve her while you were standing right there invisible? Listen, my friend, I have something for you. If you're tired of being invisible to the women you want, if you're tired of watching her smile at guys who barely respect her, then it's time to change the game. I've put together a complete guide, something real, practical, and made for men who are done guessing. Inside, I show you exactly how to approach her with confidence, how to hold her attention in a room full of noise, and how to turn that spark into real connection. From the first glance, to unforgettable nights that feel like something out of a story. No confusion, no guesswork, just step-by-step clarity. But here's the part I'm most excited about, and here's the best part. Once you grab your copy, you'll also get the chance to connect directly with me. You can share your progress, ask questions, and I'll personally guide you through the journey. Because this isn't just a book, it's a transformation waiting to happen. You'll also get access to my next book where I take you behind the curtain into the psychology of attraction, timing, and connection. So you don't just get her attention, you keep it. The link is waiting for you right now in the comment section. Don't keep watching other men live the life you've been dreaming of. Go grab the blueprint and make it happen for yourself. Now let's get back to my story. The next morning he left quietly. But something in me stayed awake long after the rain stopped. The next morning the sun came out, but somehow everything still smelled like rain. I stood in front of my mirror trying to convince myself that the night before hadn't changed anything, that it was just the storm, the darkness, the loneliness, all blending into something that shouldn't have meant more than it did. But when I saw him that afternoon walking through the workshop, surrounded by noise and light, my heart made a sound only I could hear. He smiled just a little and I looked away. Sometimes pretending not to see someone takes more courage than loving them ever could. In the workshop I spoke the way I always did, steady, calm, composed. But every time I turned toward the window, I could feel him there. His quiet presence had its own gravity, and I foolishly kept orbiting closer. He asked questions he didn't need to ask, simple ones just to hear me speak. He stayed behind when everyone else left, lingering in that polite way that feels almost innocent until it doesn't. He said softly, "Thank you again for letting me stay the other night." And I told him it was nothing. But in my chest, everything said it was something. Guilt and longing wear the same scent. You can't tell them apart until it's too late. After work, I tried to busy myself, organizing the restoration materials, cataloging the pieces, pretending my hands weren't shaking. Marcus offered to help, quietly arranging the tools before I could refuse. The way he listened when I spoke, the way his eyes lingered on my hands, it made the air between us hum. When he passed by me to reach a supply box, his arm brushed mine. Not an accident, but not a confession either. Just a small collision of skin that felt bigger than it should. I told myself it was harmless, just an apprentice being helpful. But innocence is the first lie love ever tells. Every secret starts small. A touch, a glance, a heartbeat that lingers too long. Later that day when I returned to my desk, there it was. A folded piece of paper sitting on top of my restoration notes. No name, no explanation. Just 7 words written in his familiar handwriting. "There's something I need to show you." I held that note for hours, tracing the edges like it might whisper what it meant if I just waited long enough. By evening, it was still in my hand, warm from the heat of my palm and heavier than any textbook I'd ever carried. That note stayed in my hand all afternoon, and by nightfall it had already found its way into my heart. I should have thrown it away. I know that. But sometimes curiosity isn't curiosity at all. Sometimes it's the soul remembering the sound of a door it once promised never to open again. And deep down, I knew that note wasn't just an invitation. It was a confession waiting to happen. What do you think she should have done here? Should I have ignored that note or followed my heart? Tell me in the comments. I read and reply to every single one. That note led me somewhere I never expected, into the part of him I wasn't ready to see. I told myself I wouldn't go. I even rehearsed the words I'd use if he asked why. But when evening came and the city turned the color of amber, I found myself standing in front of his studio flat in Leith, heart trembling, coat still damp with excuses. The door was slightly open and the scent met me first. Fresh clay, faint sandalwood, and something softer like music that never really ends. He looked up when I entered, surprised, but not shocked, as if he'd known I would come. Some invitations are written on paper. Others are written on the pull between 2 hearts that never learned how to stay apart. The room was small, barely wide enough for 2 people to breathe without touching. A record played quietly in the background. Soft jazz, slow, almost shy. And there, sitting on an easel, was the sculpture. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at until I saw the details. My details. "It's you," he said softly. "It's not finished yet." I was trying to sculpt what grace looks like. I didn't move. Couldn't. Every curve felt like a confession. Every line like a sentence he'd been too careful to speak. Sometimes being seen feels more dangerous than being touched. I stepped closer, studying the way he had shaped me. Not perfect, not young, but honest. There was warmth in it, a kind of longing that made me feel both beautiful and guilty. It was as if he'd captured a version of me I'd forgotten how to be. He was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice that trembled between truth and restraint, he said, "I didn't mean for it to look exactly like you, but I think it was always supposed to." I smiled, a small broken thing, and asked what he meant. He just shrugged, eyes falling back to the piece, and said, "Some things create themselves." It was just a sculpture, but I swear I could feel my heartbeat trapped in his hand's memory. We talked after that, not about the sculpture but about everything else, dreams, loneliness, the weight of wanting to be known. He told me how art makes him feel less invisible. I told him how silence can feel like a room you never leave. At one point he laughed. That soft, unguarded kind of laughter that always happens before a storm. And then he reached for his tools, selected a fine chisel, and asked, "Can I finish it with you here?" I should have said no. But the word never found my mouth. There's a kind of yes that hides inside every silence. And that night mine spoke louder than any word could. He picked up his tools again, eyes flicking between the sculpture and me. The air thickened, glowing with everything unspoken. Each careful touch seemed to blur the line between who we were and who we were becoming. When he looked up at me again, there was something in his gaze that said it all, that we had already crossed into something neither of us could name. Before I continue, I just want to thank you all, my amazing subscribers who keep this channel alive with your love and patience. These stories take time and a lot of heart to create. If you've ever felt a connection like mine right now, please like this video, subscribe, share it with someone who still believes in love that heals and hurts at once, and turn on your notifications so you'll be the first to hear the next story. He picked up his tools again. But that night what he shaped wasn't just me. It was us. I told myself it was just dinner. A small thank you for the sculpture he created, the one that somehow saw more of me than any mirror ever had. I remember lighting the candles, not because I wanted to impress him, but because I didn't want the room too bright. The soft flicker felt like protection, like honesty could only exist in half light. When he knocked, the rain had already started again, steady, slow, as if the world itself was breathing in rhythm with us. Marcus stepped in, his jacket damp, his smile a little nervous, and God, that made me breathe easier. We sat across from each other, plates warm, wine poured. He joked about burning his tongue on the stew. And for a while we laughed. It felt easy, familiar, dangerous in its comfort. But somewhere between the laughter and the silence, the air changed. He looked up, eyes catching the candle light, and said softly, "You know, you deserve to be seen, Elena." Not just looked at, seen. The way he said it made my heart stumble. No one had said something like that in years. Not with that kind of truth. I tried to deflect, to smile, to make it lighter than it was, but his words lingered in the space between us, warm, patient, unwilling to leave. I finally whispered, "You're too young to understand what love costs." And he said so quietly I almost missed it, "Maybe, but I know what it's worth." The candle flickered. The music hummed low. Rain pressed against the windows like it wanted to listen in. That was the moment I realized some silences aren't empty. They're full of everything we can't say out loud. We didn't move closer. Not yet. But something between us did. It shifted slow and certain, like two tides finally finding each other after years of pretending not to. He reached for his glass and our hands brushed barely. It was nothing. And yet it was everything. The room felt smaller after that. Even the air seemed to hum like it knew what we were trying not to feel. We talked again about art, about loneliness, about the strange ache that comes from being seen too late. Every word felt like a thread pulling us closer. And somewhere between the rain and the rhythm, two flames leaned into each other until the space between them forgot to exist. I don't remember who spoke last. Maybe neither of us did. Maybe words had finally become too small for what was happening in that room. All I know is that the night slowed down like it didn't want to end. And when morning finally came, I should have felt regret. But when I saw his note on the pillow, a simple, gentle line that said, "Thank you for seeing me too," I felt peace instead. And that scared me more than anything. Be honest. Do you think love like this can ever be right, even when it's wrong on paper? Tell me what your heart says in the comments. I read them all. Weeks passed, quietly at first. Then came the whispers, not loud enough to accuse, but sharp enough to wound. Little fragments of curiosity floating down corridors, names spoken too softly to trace. But I knew, always knew, they weren't just talking about him. They were talking about us. I stopped eating in the staff room. I left meetings early. And every time I saw him across the workshop smiling with his colleagues, I told myself, this is how it should be. But inside I was unraveling, thread by thread. Some distances aren't measured in miles, but in the things we don't say anymore. I started locking my office door between sessions, avoiding eye contact, pretending that the air didn't still carry his voice when I opened a window. He noticed. Course he did. One afternoon, he lingered after everyone left, a hesitant look in his eyes, like he was searching for a reason to stay, but I couldn't give him one. So, I smiled, the kind of smile that says goodbye without using the word. And for a moment, he looked at me like he wanted to fight it. Then he nodded and walked away. The sound of that door closing behind him, that was the moment I knew it was really over. And yet, even endings can echo like beginnings when your heart refuses to let go. The program completion came too soon. The gallery was filled with laughter, camera flashes, and the kind of joy that breaks you softly when you realize it doesn't belong to you anymore. He stood near his display, collar neat and proper, and when his name was called for recognition, I clapped quietly because that's all I was allowed to do. He didn't look for me. But as he walked toward the exit, I could have sworn he slowed, just enough for a single glance toward the back corner. Maybe it was my imagination. Or maybe he really did see me, and that was his way of saying goodbye. Love doesn't always end with doors slamming. Sometimes it ends with someone looking back just once. Days turned to weeks. The whispers faded. Life somehow began pretending to move on. Then one late afternoon I found it. A package on my office desk wrapped carefully in brown paper. No note, no name, just quiet understanding. I unwrapped it slowly and there it was, the sculpture, the one he promised he'd finish someday, mounted on polished wood, signed quietly at the base with his name, Marcus Sullivan. My breath caught. He had shaped me as I looked that night. Not how I was, but how he must have seen me, alive, unhidden, peaceful. He was 8 years younger, I whispered. But he saw me clearer. And somehow that made sense. Some love stories aren't meant to be kept. They're meant to be remembered. I took the sculpture home that evening, placed it in a quiet corner of my living room where no one else would see, where only I could. As I stepped back, the rain began again outside. Soft, steady, familiar. The same rhythm from that night, the same sound that had changed everything. Even now when it rains, I still hear the silence that started it all. And maybe that's enough. Let me ask you this. How many chances have you already missed with women because you didn't know the right move to make? Listen, my friend. I have a gift for you. Here's the truth. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always got: rejection, frustration, and missed chances. But if you're serious about finally getting the woman you desire in your arms, if you're ready to stop overthinking and start winning, then you need to take action today. My book gives you the exact system you need. Not just to talk to her, but to win her heart, to take her out, build a real connection, and spark the kind of passion that ends with her choosing you. It's step by step, simple, and made for real men ready to rewrite their story. And here's the best part. Once you grab your copy, you'll also get the chance to connect directly with me. You can share your progress, ask questions, and I'll personally guide you through the journey. Because this isn't just a book, it's a transformation waiting to happen. Don't wait until it's too late. Check the pinned comment right now. Grab your copy and start living the life you deserve. Sometimes the heart remembers what the world tries to erase.